Today, we're plunging into, well, a world of adrenaline, a pretty chilling look at humanity pushed right to its limits.
That's right. Today we're taking a deep dive into 28 Weeks Later. You know, the 2007 sequel that didn't just revisit the rage virus, it amplified the terror exponentially.
I believe it.
We've got articles, some really interesting behind-the-scenes interviews, and even a few gems from the commentary track. Lots to unpack about this film.
Definitely. Our mission today is to unearth some of those fascinating production challenges, the creative choices that made this follow-up such a raw and unforgettable experience.
Exploring how it built on the first one 28 days later, while really carving out its own distinct, horrifying path. So, okay, let's set the scene first. 28 weeks later. It picks up 6 months after the first film. The initial outbreak, it seems, has burned itself out.
Right, the infected presumably starved to death.
And London is trying to breathe again. NATO forces, they've set up this safe zone on the Isle of Dogs. They're starting this huge repopulation effort.
It's a massive undertaking. You see this fragile sort of hope being rebuilt in this scarred city.
But what's really compelling and kind of heartbreaking is how the film immediately grounds this big premise with a very human and tragically flawed story.
Yeah, that meticulously built piece. It gets
so.
shattered, not by some big external invasion, but from within, by Don's kids, Tammy and Andy.
They sneak out, don't they? Back to their old house.
Yeah.
Outside the safe zone.
Exactly. And in doing that, totally unknowingly, they reintroduce the rage virus, and it just ignites the nightmare all over again, but faster, fiercer.
It leads to this complete, horrifying collapse of everything they were trying to rebuild. It's just a terrifyingly rapid spiral from hope back to chaos.
Yeah, utter chaos.
And the sources we looked at really flagged this as a key shift. 28 days later was very much about individual survival, just trying to make it through.
Right, pure survival horror.
Whereas 28 weeks later moves right into the aftermath. It shows how quickly organized society, even with the military supposedly in control, can just destabilize, completely fall apart.
You really feel that change in scale. And the stakes feel higher somehow. It also feels, well, bigger budget, more Hollywood, maybe.
Oh, definitely. Much bigger budget, a more sprawling cast. You absolutely see that on screen. One source we read put it perfectly, said it took the original's intensity and put it on steroids.
That's a good way to put it. It wasn't just more explosions, though. It shifted the focus. Less personal running, more societal breakdown. Systemic dread, almost.
Yeah, exactly. Systemic dread. Okay, so behind the camera.
Yeah.
Big changes there, too, right?
Oh, yeah. The most significant was the director, Danny Boyle, who did such an amazing job on 28 Days Later.
Masterful job.
Right. He was deep into making Sunshine in 2007, his sci-fi film.
So he couldn't direct the sequel.
No. He stepped back into an executive producer role, which, still means influence, and he actually directed some second unit stuff.
Oh, really? Like what?
Bits and pieces, action sequences, establishing shots. Apparently, he was responsible for that absolutely terrifying opening sequence, the cottage scene.
Wow, okay. That makes sense. It has his feel. So who did direct?
It was Boyle who suggested Juan Carlos Fresnadillo. He'd seen Fresnadillo's earlier film, Intacto, and was really impressed.
Intacto. Okay. I remember that one. Very cool, twisty film. So Fresnadillo comes in, relatively new.
Yeah, only one feature under his belt. He co-wrote the script, too, and he had this very specific vision. He wanted a horror documentary feel.
A horror documentary?
Yeah.
How do you achieve that?
Well, a big part was the shooting style. He chose Super 16 film. It's a smaller format, gives you a grittier, more immediate look.
Right, less polished.
Exactly. And he embraced handheld cameras, lots of them. So it puts you, the viewer, right in the thick of it, creates this incredibly frantic, kinetic energy, like you're there trying to capture it all.
You definitely feel that frantic energy. It's relentless.
And the shoot itself sounds like it was pretty grueling. 10 weeks all over London, which must have been a nightmare logistically.
I bet. Robert Carlyle actually mentioned that, didn't he?
Yeah, he talked about the challenge of just clearing streets, having crew in fluorescent jackets, literally stopping commuters for seconds at a time to grab a shot.
Wow. That takes dedication. Capturing a deserted London like that.
Totally. And speaking of capturing London, the night scenes were really interesting technically.
Oh, yeah. That desperate journey across the city with the kids and Scarlett and Doyle.
Yeah.
How did they do that?
Well, the cinematographer, Enrique Shediak, used this relatively new day-for-night technique, shooting in daylight but making it look like night.
Okay, I've heard of that. Was it just for the look?
Not entirely. It was really practical. For one, it meant they could work more easily with the child actors, Macintosh Muggleton especially. Child labor laws restrict night shoots.
Ah, right. Makes sense.
And it also solved a huge problem. In the film's world, the power grid is down, completely dark.
So they wouldn't have had to digitally erase thousands of building lights.
Exactly. Shooting during the day meant fewer lights were on anyway, made creating that blackout effect much more seamless and realistic. Pretty clever,
Wow.
actually.
Very clever. And the visual effects generally, they were pretty ambitious too, weren't they?
Hugely ambitious. Over 400 complex VFX shots in the film, but Fresnadillo was apparently really insistent that they serve the story.
Back to that documentary feel, not just spectacle.
Right. Making the impossible seem terrifyingly real, like the firebombing of London, that was intense, or that brutal helicopter scene.
Oh God, the rotor blades hitting the infected, that was horrifying.
Yeah. And technically very complex. They combined real actors, blue screen, incredibly detailed dummies, practical effects on set, and then loads of CG work. A real mix of techniques to get that visceral impact.
It definitely worked. Okay, let's shift gears. The cast, I mean,
Whew.
wow.
Seriously. It's a who's who, almost. Robert Carlyle, obviously. Jeremy Renner, Rose Byrne, Imogen Poots.
Harold Perrineau, Idris Elba. It's quite the lineup for a horror sequel.
It really elevates it, I think, brings a certain weight to it.
And Robert Carlyle is Don. His performance is just incredible.
Yeah.
So complex, so haunting.
Absolutely. He plays this ordinary guy, really forced into making these just impossible, unforgivable choices.
Like abandoning Alice in the opening. Gut-wrenching.
Carlyle himself called Don a sad character, creating a fantastic moral dilemma. He apparently put a lot of thought into playing Infected Dawn, too.
Oh, yeah. How so?
He came up with his own specific guttural growl for the character, something distinct from the first film's Infected.
Yeah.
And he wanted this sense of, like, dripping blood as he moved, little details.
Wow. His commitment. Didn't he get hurt doing one scene?
He did, yeah. The scene where he attacks Alice, he got so into it he apparently smashed his head on a cabinet. Proper physical commitment.
Ouch. Intense. And Jeremy Renner is Doyle the sniper?
Yeah, he worked hard to make those soldiers feel human, not just, generic military guys, burdened by what they had to do.
It's funny, someone pointed out it felt like his audition for The Hurt Locker.
Yeah, you can see that. Came out just 2 years later. He also shared this interesting little tidbit about filming.
What was that?
A lot of his scenes talking to Harold Perrineau's character, Flynn, over the walkie-talkies.
Yeah.
Well, Perrineau hadn't even been cast yet when Renner filmed his part, so Renner was literally talking to nobody, just reacting into thin air.
No way. That takes some serious acting skill, reacting to nothing.
Right. Shows his ability.
Okay, so beyond the big stuff, the film's packed with little details too, right? Easter eggs and things.
Oh, yeah, tons. For instance, the character named Doyle. That was a little nod to Danny Boyle.
Doyle Boyle. Nice. Subtle.
And here's another one directly linked to Boyle's input. Alice's immunity. Remember, she has heterochromia. Different colored eyes.
Yeah, I remember that.
Boyle apparently suggested that the virus couldn't fully take hold in both eyes because they were different. That's why she's a carrier but doesn't succumb to the full rage.
That's fascinating. And eyes are such a big motif in both films, aren't they? Those close-ups.
Definitely. From the monkeys in the first film onwards. And speaking of brutality and callbacks, remember how Dawn kills Alice?
Yeah. Thumbs through the eyes. Horrible.
It's a direct, very visceral callback to how Jim killed Mitch in the mansion and 28 Days Later. Same method.
Wow, I hadn't made that connection. It's dark. Shows that cycle of violence, I guess.
Exactly. Raw, desperate violence when people are pushed to the edge.
And they used real locations creatively too, right? Even if they fudged geography a bit.
Oh, yeah. The scenes set at Wembley Stadium, they were actually filmed down in Cardiff at the Millennium Stadium, now the Principality Stadium.
Really? Did they change anything?
Digitally changed the seat colors to red to match Wembley. And the underground scenes.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
So creepy.
Yes.
Where were they shot?
They used the disused Jubilee Line platforms at Charing Cross Station in London, and also parts of the old Aldwych Station, which is closed now but used a lot for filming.
Ah, the ghost stations. Perfect eerie backdrop.
Totally. And technically, we have to mention the music. John Murphy's score.
Oh, absolutely incredible. Builds on the first one, but feels bigger too.
It does. It brings back that iconic theme, In the House in a Heartbeat, which is just legendary now.
You hear it everywhere.
Right. But there are also new tracks that feel a bit like his score for Boyle Sunshine. He experimented with these long, slow, kind of unsettling crescendos.
Yeah, they build the tension unbearably.
Exactly. A tonal sounds building and building. He mixed a string section recorded in Prague with like hardcore guitars and electronics, created this really unique, dread-filled atmosphere. Breathtaking, really.
It really is.
Yeah.
And beyond the scares and the action, the film has richer themes too, doesn't it? People read a lot into it.
Definitely. It's often interpreted as a metaphor for the War on Terror era, highlighting failures in military structures, trying to impose order on chaos.
And how little mistakes, tiny slip-ups, can lead to massive, uncontrollable outbreaks, which feels, well, chillingly relevant after the last few years.
Very relatable now, yeah. Shows how fragile control really is.
And that core dilemma with Don and Alice, him abandoning her unknowingly infecting him later.
It really hammers home that idea, doesn't it? That in this kind of horrible context, love, compassion, family ties, they can be turned against you, made dangerous.
Family becomes both solace and potentially the source of your deepest dread.
Exactly. Because unlike classic zombies, these infected do recognize you on some level, which makes the betrayal, the transformation so much more personal, so much more brutal.
So wrapping things up, what really stands out to you from this deep dive? For me, it's just that sheer ambition. 28 Weeks Later didn't just want to repeat the first film. It wanted to escalate everything, the scale, the horror, the human drama.
Yeah, the escalation is key. And it pushes that question, doesn't it? In a world where doing the right thing, being compassionate, could literally unleash hell, how would you choose? What would you do?
Those impossible choices.
It pushes that fight or flight instinct to the absolute extreme. Shows a really dark side of self-preservation. Makes you think, doesn't it, about those lines you might cross?
It absolutely does. And that's our sprint through 28 Weeks Later. We really hope this deep dive gave you some new insights, maybe a chilling new appreciation for this super intense sequel.
Until next time.